Woodlawn, a land of many contrasts. Bordered by beautiful Lake Michigan on the east, Woodlawn has been the center of monumental events in the history of Chicago and the world, many of them designed to uplift the Black community.
Over a century ago, in 1893, Frederick Douglass and Ida B. Wells joined forces to protest the negative portrayal of Black people at the World Columbian Exposition in Chicago. Wells and Douglass produced a pamphlet urging Black people to boycott the fair unless the organizers of this global event stopped their racist practices. Eventually, a special day was set aside to honor the contributions of Black people. Wells went on to settle in Chicago after the fair and became part of a network of organizers with her soon-to-be husband, Ferdinand Barnett. 100 years later, from the racial uprisings during the Red Summer of 1919 to the rise of Black Wall Street in the 20s and 30s, to the elections of Harold Washington in the 1980s and Barack Obama at the turn of the century, Black organizers in Chicago have led many of the greatest social and economic movements in the history of America and the world.
A large portion of the World Columbian Exposition took place here on the Midway Plaisance, what was once a de facto dividing line between the races. In the 1930s, as Black people seeking a better life migrated by the tens of thousands from the South to Chicago, white property owners made a pact among themselves to refuse to sell homes to Black people. These racist pacts were called restrictive covenants, race cards of the highest order.
And Carl Hansberry, her father, was a person who broke the barrier, legal barrier, of housing segregation.
On May 26, 1937, Carl Hansberry, the father of Lorraine Hansberry, moved his wife and 4 children into a home at 6140 South Rhodes, which at the time was an all-white area.
And he had a white friend of his buy a piece of property in northwest Woodlawn. Then that white friend, by agreement, immediately sold it back to him.
White homeowners tried to intimidate the family with threats of violence.
So immediately, when the whites began to use violence, the Negroes moving there who were middle class, these were not poor Negroes, they immediately responded, their husbands, or the men immediately responded to fight back.
The property owners decided to sue the Hansberries, charging that the presence of their family in a white neighborhood was a violation of restricted covenants. A typical clause read, "No property in said addition shall at any time be sold, conveyed, rented, or leased in whole or in part to any person or persons not of the Caucasian or white race." The case eventually went to the U.S. Supreme Court, and in 1940, due to a legal technicality, the case was won by the Hansberries, allowing them to stay in their home.
And of course, eventually the whites all moved out. I would say between that period of 1939, I think, when the Hansberry, to the period when I was drafted along other young to be in World War II. So I would say roughly 5 or 6 years, didn't take long.
Lorraine often lamented that the brutal fight for fair housing compromised her father's health and caused him to die of a cerebral hemorrhage at the young age of 50. Today in 2025, organizations such as Blacks in Green are bringing new life to Woodlawn with innovative programs such as the Sustainable Square Mile. BIG recently held
the third in a series of Mississippi Fish Fries, to bring community together and learn more about big stewardship of the Emmett and Mamie Till Mobley House Museum and the effort to secure several more vacant lots from the city in order to help revitalize this old hood. It's time to rise to the occasion and make Woodlawn the gold standard in community development.
Mississippi Fish Fry!
All right! Blacks and green. It's big.